Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. And now we get a cool down week, sort of what I was expecting, given that there wasn't really any big crossover releases outside of some scattered singles. And really, there are some songs that are lingering longer than I'm personally comfortable, but hey, given how busy I've been the past couple of days, I will take what I can get. Granted, none of this makes our top 10 much better, where once again, God's Plan by Drake holds the number one. 10 weeks now, but more than ever now, the margins are becoming tenuous, especially as streaming in radio as it's slowing down. Still, it's holding up over Meant to Be by BB Rexa featuring Florida Georgia Line at number 2, which is still surging on the radio, but sales and streaming aren't close to approaching the right margins. Unless there's a significant disruption, I don't see it going to the very top. But then we get the rebound for Finesse by Bruno Mars and Cardi B, and look, as much as I really like the song, and it might get more of a boost with Cardi B's upcoming debut album, and the sales, they were just fantastic this week, I'll give it that. It has lost so much streaming and radio starting to bleed, I sadly don't see it getting much higher. We also saw an increase for Psycho by Post Malone featuring Ty Dolla $ign at number 4, mostly thanks to a slight rebound on streaming, and it is making gains on airplay, just not really fast enough and the sales aren't recovering. It only really jumped up thanks to Perfect by Ed Sheeran in Free Fall down to number 5 across the board, and that places it up against the resurgent Look Alive by Blockboy JB featuring Drake breaking back into the top 10 at number 6, mostly thanks to big streaming and some solid radio pickups. Hell, it rose over The Middle by Zedd, Maren Morrison, Greg, which is now down to number 7. As great as its radio is, the sales and streaming aren't quite enough to push it any higher. It is thankfully keeping it above Freaky Friday by Lil Dicky featuring Chris Brown up to number 8. And again, for as much as the song is an offensive atrocity, it's only really here because of streaming and YouTube. And considering we have some major disruptors in that territory down the pipeline from The Weeknd, I am comfortable knowing it will not last that much longer. It did rise above Sad by XXXTentacion at number 9, but you kind of expected the loss there after the album bomb faded. All it really has is streaming, and again, that's vulnerable to disruption. Finally, we've got Havana by Camila Cabello featuring Young Thug clinging on to number 10, even as it apparently had a decent week on streaming. It's too little, and given its airplay losses, really just too late. And on that note, our losers and dropouts. 3 pretty considerable ones in the latter category here, all of which have enough points to comfortably make the year-end list for 2018. Young, Dumb and Broke by Khalid, How Long by Charlie Puth, and thankfully Skywalker by Miguel featuring Travis Scott. And when you look at our losses, honestly, while I'm disappointed that 5 More Minutes by Scotty McCreery is fading at 72, he's taken out Moonlight and The Remedy for a Broken Heart, Why Am I So in Love by XXXTentacion to 48 and 97 respectively. Beyond that, well, Logic is continuing to fade, with Every Day with Marshmello down to 67 and 44 more down to 85, and All on Me by Devin Dawson hit a sudden drop to 62, which looks to be linked how he kind of ran out his time on country radio. It happens. Now, as I've said in the past, what tends to be a lot more interesting after an album bomb are the gains and the returning entries, and well, in the latter category, we got This Is Me from Keela Settled in the Greatest Showman soundtrack back at number 87, and Rubbing Off the Paint by YBN Namir back yet again to 96. But hey, I'm just happy to see Get You by Daniel Caesar and Kali Uchis back at 99. Hopefully you'll get a boost off the hype off of Uchis' album. That'd be nice to see. Now the gains, they're a little more scattered, but outside of Tell Me You Love Me by Demi Lovato somehow getting another boost to 59, apparently at a good sales week, most of these songs are at the very least tolerable. Power Glide by Ray Strimmer and Juicy J's continuing up to 38 off of streaming and good production, along with Delicate by Taylor Swift up to 52 off of a respectable radio pickups. Then we got the big gains off debuts for One Number Away by Luke Combs to 73, and In My Blood by Shawn Mendes to 22. Well, overall, Shawn Mendes had a really good week, but we'll get to more of that in a few minutes. And finally, we had a few gains for returning entries, with Tequila by Dan and Shay up to 74, and Sativa by Jhené Aiko and Sway Lee up to 80. I mean, I've got no expectations that the latter will gain serious traction, but hey, guy can dream, right? But this takes us to a pretty sparse list of new arrivals, starting off with number 100, No Roots by Alice Merton. On the ground, I've got no roots, but my home was never on the ground. I've got no roots. I've got no roots. You know, I have seen this name before as a young artist accumulating buzz, so it genuinely surprised me to discover this is her first single to chart on the Hot 100, released way back in 2016 and finally now getting some attention thanks to a car commercial, and apparently it was in season 5 of The Blacklist, a show I just don't watch. So, alright, what's there to say about Alice Merton in this song? Well, it's certainly got some groove to it. That stalking, fat bass line and the sharp percussion has some real swagger that matches how well Alice Merton's alto cuts across the mix with some real theatricality that I can definitely respect, and the jagged accents of guitar and synth, they've got some great presence to it. It honestly reminds me a little bit of fellow Canadian Serena Ryder in the similar stomping groove, but this actually has a much quicker tempo, and unlike Stompa, the song actually makes some sense lyrically, with the curt expectation that when you don't have an established sense of place or home, you learn how to live lean and on the road pretty hard. And while I've become more settled in recent years in Toronto, given that I've lived all over this country, I can certainly empathize. Of course, it helps the song is pretty kick-ass too. It's a great track. Car companies, more of Alice Merton, less of X-Ambassadors and Imagine Dragons please, because this is pretty great. Check it out. Next up, number 95, For the First Time by Darius and Rucker. Let your hair down, feel alive. When was the last time you did something for the first time? It's always a little weird for me to cover Darius Rucker these days, mostly because I keep going into his music with the expectation that I'll be more interesting than it is. And then I remember his best song ever was a Bob Dylan cover, and why the hell should I expect the former frontman of Hootie and the Blowfish to be interesting? And with this, look, Darius Rucker has more charisma than most, and he knows his way around a decent hook, but I can't be the only one who finds this sort of production a little bit too ramshackle for his smoother tones, despite him trying to play into this more nasal twang, which doesn't really sound good, especially when it falls into a pretty by-the-numbers pickup jam that overloads the percussion texture at the expense of everything else. I mean, I do find it amusing that Darius Rucker's frame of musical reference is REM, which seems like an odd choice for a song like this, but beyond that, okay, look, unless this gets a prime spot on country radio, which it probably will, you won't remember this exists in a day or two. It's not bad, but it's not really all that memorable either. Just saying. Next up, number 86, Up Down by Morgan Wallen featuring Georgia Line. We got what we got, we don't need the rest. Can turn this parking lot into a party with a nice chest and some cold beer, man. We live it up, down, we live it up, down. See, this is the other big reason I didn't want Meant to Be to blow up as much as it did, because it gives Florida Georgia Line the foothold and the influence to co-sponsor other mediocre to awful acts in mainstream bro country that won't let the damn subgenre stay dead. Anyway, you might recognize Morgan Wallen if you watched The Voice a few years back, but after he was eliminated, he wound up working with Florida Georgia Line producer Joey Moy, started opening for Florida Georgia Line, and now they're on his big breakout single, which is all about the motion of things going up and down, like fishing lures, swigging whiskey, and people nodding formlessly to Freebird. Seriously, that's what it is. Beyond that, it's very bro country in the pointless lisp variety with a really ugly guitar lead melody, an organ that's trying to add some texture to Joey Moy's characteristically overloaded mix, and a drum progression that sounds like the drummer was pounding all the whiskey that was referenced in the song, because it's got no stable groove or real momentum whatsoever, not helped by the drum machines either. You know, it's truly stunning that years after the bro country template was really popularized by Florida Georgia Line, songs this slapdash are still getting released. And while I have heard worse in this subgenre, it is far from good. Next, number 70, Japan by Famous Dex. 50,000 in Japan. I ain't doing no plan, these red bottoms on no Vans. And she telling all her friends, I might put them on the ground. Ay, baby girl, what you doing? Where your man? I just popped a Zan, 50,000 in Japan. I ain't doing no plan, these red bottoms on no Vans. And she telling all her friends, I might put them on the ground. Ay. So apparently I talked about Famous Dex on a song with A$AP Rocky in December of last year. Yeah, I don't remember it either, outside of a good soul sample and lingering disappointment. But apparently he's back with one of 2 debuts this week referencing Japan of all things, and it's not bad. Famous Dex is a little bit more melodic than many of his peers, and the roiling bass playing off of the faded synth leads is pretty enough, but outside of a modestly catchy hook, it's hard to feel like Famous Dex is adding anything all that interesting in his delivery or content here beyond some flexing that we've heard dozens of times before. I will note there's been some controversy surrounding how this hook calls back to a previous verse where he said he wasn't popping Xanax on another song and now he is, but that feels painfully thin. What's stood out a lot more is that he didn't seem to be taking anybody's girl until the end of the second verse where he references the boyfriend. Ugh, whatever. It's not like any of these vapid trap songs are all that memorable, and this, no exception. Next, number 64, Lost in Japan by Shawn Mendes.
100 miles from Japan and I was thinking I could fly to your hotel tonight. Cause I can't get you off my mind. Can't get you off my mind. Can't get you off my mind.
So apparently, in comparison with the other single Shawn Mendes put out last week, this is the good one. His Castle on the Hill compared to In My Blood, Shape of You, or did I get that mixed up? Because this is certainly the more groove-driven, almost disco-esque tune from Shawn Mendes that's playing to a bassy, glossy synth and piano bounce that's probably closer to vintage Justin Timberlake than Justin Timberlake himself released this year. Now granted, Shawn Mendes is playing to a much more tender side than most of Justin Timberlake's posturing ever did, but he's surprisingly credible in this lane, mostly through the sort of groove that's about the best thing he's ever had, along with a pretty good multi-track falsetto. I'll give him that. Even with that though, I'm not quite entirely convinced Shawn Mendes has the charisma to pull this song off just yet, but it's a solid effort, and one I respect a fair bit. It's a different lane for him, so yeah, nice work. Looking forward to hearing more. And finally, number 60, Say Amen, Saturday Night by Panic at the Disco. I'm not gonna lie, there's a part of me that's just kind of tired whenever I see a new Panic at the Disco song charting. And because it's a solo Brendan Urie venture at this point, and even if I really did love Crazy Equals Genius 2 years ago, there's a part of me that either Urie go under his own name or just bring the band back together for another bout of genre-bending experimentation that could really showcase what they truly had as a unit that was so promising. And as for this song, honestly, it's pretty solid in terms of the horn line and the strings, along with the hook and Brendan Urie sounding as fine behind the microphone as ever before, certainly better than I sound right now. But am I the only one who feels like the mix is a little bit hollow with this chopped collage of samples that doesn't really build to a stronger groove or anything close to an edge? As for the content, it's playing with a blend of religious iconography and standing on principles juxtaposed against a more ruckus party vibe, and that does drive some decent dramatic tension into that crazy high note that Brendan Urie hits. I'll give him credit for that, but I don't know. It's not really grabbing me as much as I would like it to, especially as I know they've made more colorful and striking songs before. It's pretty good, sure, but I think it's just a slight step away from great, and that is disappointing. I know they're capable of more. But that being said, the only really bad song we had this week was Up Down by Morgan Wallen and Florida Georgia Line, so why not skip this honorable mention for once and give it 2 honorable mentions. One to Say Amen, Saturday Night by Panic at the Disco. It is a good song. And the other for Lost in Japan by Shawn Mendes, with the best easily going to No Roots by Alice Merton. Next week, we'll see how much of an impact that weekend will notch with that EP of his, so until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectacles, and I'll see you next time.